Hey guys, I don't know if it's like too soon for me to talk about the early 2000s today because the thing that everyone thought would happen in the year Y2K kind of just happened for reals. Is everybody okay? You doing all right? I don't know about you, but when the current events of the world are driving me insane, I like to kick back with a horror movie. Hi, I'm Kylie. I am also the Antichrist. I love talking about horror movies with you all. If you enjoy that too, if you enjoy celebrating Halloween year round, then click subscribe. Click the like button, click the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. Lately, I've been talking about a lot of underrated horror, and today is no different. We are moving on to the early 2000s. Recently, I've also done the top 10 underrated horror movies of the 1980s and the 1990s. My parameters might not fit what you're expecting, so let me explain. I like to look at how many people have logged a movie on Letterboxd because I feel like it's kind of the best number we have to the amount of people that have seen the movie. Obviously, it's not going to be a 1-to-1 ratio because those movies came out like 20 years ago at this point. Letterboxd wasn't around back then, but you know, what movies have stood the test of time? What movies are hundreds of thousands of people still watching, like the Saw movies, versus what movies in the time that Letterboxd has been around have maybe only 5,000 people watched? There's not a single movie on my top 10 list that has over 38,000 logs on Letterboxd, and the 38,000 is an anomaly. Okay, that's the highest one. Most of them have under 20,000 logs. In the honorable mentions, the numbers are a little bit higher. They're just numbers that, in my opinion, are still too low for the quality of those movies. As far as my top 10 list goes, you can maybe disregard the actual order of the ranking. It's very personal to me. It doesn't necessarily reflect the actual quality of the movies, nor does it reflect how many people have logged them on Letterboxd. It is a little bit mixed up. Some parts of the logic of this list just cannot be explained, alright? The rationale is far too deep in my brain, even I can't pull it out. So let's just start with the honorable mentions. Starting with Bug. This is from 2006. This has been logged 44,000 times, so it is the highest logged on this list. That's probably because it's a movie directed by William Friedkin, who, yes, directed The Exorcist, the original. I just wanted to give this movie a shout out, not because I love it by any means. It was actually a really tough watch for me. It's very intense, really good performances, but it's about shared psychosis and these two people in a very toxic relationship and the conspiracy theories that they fall prey to whilst they are kind of hyping up each other's mental illnesses. It's really, really weird. I don't think I'd watch it again, but it's something super different, so I think it's worth checking out. At number 14, we have Cherry Falls. This one has been logged 22,000 times. This one I wanted to give a shout out because it's a super early 2000s little slasher. I didn't really like this movie, but I know that a lot of people do and find it highly underrated, and so I think it's probably worth you checking it out to see where you fall. Maybe you'll love it, okay? Just because I didn't doesn't mean that you won't. The fun premise flip in that movie is that the killer is seeking out virgins rather than sexually promiscuous people as its victims. At number 13, I have The Breed, and this actually would be considered my most underrated on the entire list with only 5.5 thousand logs on Letterboxd. It seems like nobody has seen this movie, but I think it might be because it went straight to DVD when it came out. But interestingly, this one is produced by Wes Craven, so I've kept my DVD of it. I have never rewatched it, but I have seen it the one time. I didn't think it was very good at all when I watched it, but it has a really unique premise. These people go away to this island and there are killer dogs on it. Not a lot of killer dog horror outside of like Cujo, I guess. Actually, there's another killer dog movie literally on this list. Let me hold my tongue. I gave it 2.5 stars like 4 years ago or whenever I first watched it, but recently I've kind of had a hankering to give it another go. So there's something there. There's gotta be something there. If nothing else, super bad, good early 2000s cheesiness, right? Oh god, same with number 12, which would be Stay Alive. This has 27,000 logs. Again, this one is another honorable mention because I thought it was so bad when I watched it, but yet again, it is a movie that I would rewatch. Like, yes, she gave it 1.5 stars on Letterboxd, but of course she'd watch it again. Similarly to The Breed, it just has a super unique concept. It's about early 2000s video games and video game horror. Tech horror in the early 2000s was so bad. It was so stupid. And it's like watching a car crash, I guess. And also, Frankie Muniz is in it. Did I pronounce that right? I don't know. Muniz? Anyway, he invented visors in that movie. All right, I don't make the rules. Anyway, on to my number 11, my last honorable mention, we have Open Water. This is another one of the the highest logged on this list at 44,000. But I kept everything under 50 today, all right? I'm not always so good at that, because a lot of times, even if a movie has like 75,000 logs, if it's a movie that I think is really good, I'm like, that's not good enough. Anyway, with Open Water, once you get past the fact that it looks like it was shot on an iPhone 4, it's pretty good. I actually found it really compelling. I think that it is one of the better shark movies out there, surprisingly. Because with the quality, when you start watching it, you would not think so. I didn't expect myself to get as wrapped up in the plot and these characters as I did, also because it is so simple. But sometimes the best movies are. So all of the honorable mentions, well, besides Open Water, because I would say that I do genuinely like Open Water. The rest of them, I didn't really like, but I do think that as a horror fan, they are movies that you probably should watch before you die, and there is a good chance that some of you out there will actually really like them. But now to get on to my top 10. Let's get into it. Oh, you know what? I lied about The Breed being the least watched on my list. That actually would go to my number 5 pick, but we'll get there soon. At number 10, we have a little movie called Population 436. This one has been logged 6.1 thousand times, so it is actually the second lowest watched on this list. This one came out in 2006, and it actually stars Fred Durst. In Population 436, a census worker investigates why the population of a small town has remained the same for the past 100 years. He soon discovers the chilling truth, but it may be too late. Is this a great movie? Absolutely not. You might turn it on and be like, ooh, the quality is kind of hurting my eyes. This movie really bums me out because I wish that I could have given it a higher rating. I don't know if I would kind of reevaluate and change my feelings on the second watch, but I've said it once, I'll say it again. A lot of underrated movies are kind of underrated for a reason. Most of the movies on my list, I don't rate higher than like 3 or 3.5 stars. But those movies are still worth watching sometimes, okay? And I feel like this one is one of them because the story is so good. I remember it being so compelling and so mysterious. I remember being surprised by some of the twists and turns the movie took. If you're a big fan of movies like Midsommar and The Wicker Man, I think that there are kind of echoes of that. The only thing is, even though the story is good, the movie itself is pretty bad. But if you can stomach that, if you don't have like annoying high standards, then you'll probably have a good time. I think it's just at least worth checking out, but that is why it's at the bottom of this list. At number 9, we have a little movie called Cry Wolf. This has been logged 20,000 times. This one came out in 2005, and I thought because other horror creators had talked about this movie, I thought that it was kind of experiencing a resurgence, and this is one of the most logged on my top 10 underrated, but it's still not what I expected. I just thought that more people had heard about this movie, but evidently you have not. Or you have and you just haven't checked it out yet. This is me telling you that it is worth checking out. This is one absolutely that it is so bad that it's good. It has the actor that played Ren in Pretty Little Liars. No, I don't know his name. It follows 8 unsuspecting high school seniors at an expensive boarding school who come face to face with terror and learn that nobody believes a liar, even when they're telling the truth. I love that Google synopsis because what do you mean? What are you talking about, girl? Like, what do you mean? I also love that it has a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's probably about where all these movies that I'm going to talk about sit. Jared Padalecki is also there. Do we got any fans of the Friday the 13th remake, Supernatural? Bad teen horror is something that I frequently enjoy injecting straight into my veins. And if you're the same way, you should definitely check out Cry Wolf. It's a little bit similar to Stay Alive because from what I remember, the internet is a pretty heavy element. And it's from the early 2000s, so as you can imagine, it's really funny. As is my next movie at number 8. I have Shrooms. I was so shocked to see this has only been logged 13,000 times on Letterboxd. I don't know why the last time I logged it, I only gave it 2 stars because I remember watching this movie as a teenager and really loving it. I think the last time that I watched it, I might have been a little bit salty because since being a teenager and being the age I am now, maybe I've taken a little bit of shrooms in between that time period, maybe allegedly. And I think that I just was mad that it was like super unrealistic. I was like, ugh, it's giving the magic mushrooms a bad name. But I don't know. It's also a bad movie, but I think if I were to rewatch it now, I'd have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, you probably guessed that this is about a group of American teenagers who travel to Ireland to experience the trip of a lifetime, as promised by their Irish friend and hallucinogens expert Jake. As gruesome events unfold, the friends can't distinguish between hallucination and reality. This one actually made almost $5 million in the box office. Good for them. That was back in 2007, and I find it funny that all the movies I've mentioned so far pretty much have taken taking place between 2005 and 2007. A lot of mid-early 2000s stuff here. If nothing else, the movie is highly unique. If Midsommar has the best depiction of a trip, then Shrooms probably has the absolute worst. There's no way that you won't have at least a little bit of fun there. Same thing with number 7, which would be Bones. This one's been logged 16,000 times, and it's real early 2000s. It came out in 2001. This one also has a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. Shrooms has a 22%. Will any of the movies that I mentioned have a score higher than 30% on Rotten Tomatoes? Only time will tell. Jimmy Bones, played by Snoop Dogg, is a legendary protector and patron of his thriving neighborhood. Cool, handsome, and respected, Bones is the benevolent caretaker of his people until he's betrayed by those closest to him. Flash forward 20 years, crime and drugs have crumbled the neighborhood, and Jimmy Bones has become a charismatic emblem of better times, but his spirit is about to make a comeback. If you're a fan of movies like Tales from the Hood or 13 Ghosts, then you have to give this movie a go. I make those comparisons because thematically it's really similar to Tales from the Hood, and then effects-wise, it's very similar to 13 Ghosts. There are amazing practical effects, and then some of them are really, really shitty. Like, for example, the blood, it's the weirdest looking movie blood I've ever seen. A lot of it is like bright pink. It just looks very off. Catherine Isabel is also there. We love her. Miss American Mary, Miss Ginger Snaps, so Jennifer could body, you know what I mean? She's not there that much. She's there a lot in the first act, so I was really enjoying myself then. The movie, it does kind of fall off for me, but the climax is so ridiculous. It's beyond worth sticking around for. Again, I was so surprised to see that it was only logged 16,000 times. It made like 9 million back in the day when it came out, and I just thought the fact that it starred Snoop Dogg and the fact that the movie had been on my radar for a really long time and I finally got around to watching it, I just thought it was a more well-known movie, but apparently not. The last thing I'll leave you with on that one is how dare Snoop Dogg stop acting in horror movies. We literally, as a culture, could have had it all. Anyway, time to move on to my number 6. We're almost to the top 5. At number 6, we have Wes Craven's Cursed. This has been logged 38,000 times. So this is my least underrated, if you will, on this list. Okay, it has the most logs. This one came out in 2004. It's got a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. In Los Angeles, siblings Ellie and Jimmy come across an accident on Mulholland Drive. As they try to help the woman caught in the wreckage, a ferocious creature attacks them, devouring the woman and scratching the terrified siblings. Yes, it does star Jesse Eisenberg and Christina Ricci. You know who else it stars? Shannon Elizabeth and Judy Greer. Portia de Rossi is there for a second. I think so is Skeet Ulrich. Derek Mears plays the werewolf. Like, what more do you want? It is so bad, okay? It's so bad, but it's not Wes Craven's fault. There is a whole backstory with this movie, and I have convinced myself that I'm the person to do the deep dive on it. I'm sure someone else probably has, but like, I need to do it for myself. Okay, I need to see the research for myself. It is one of the craziest stories of a studio horror movie that's ever been made that I've ever heard. It has to be seen to be believed, okay? It is an utter mess. I think over half of the movie ended up being reshot, if not more. The script was rewritten like a bajillion times during production. Like, it was insane. And I love the movie. Unironically, I love it so much. It is my highest rated movie on this list. I really, really wanted to put it at the top, but then I kind of grappled with it because I was like, well, I can't have the most viewed movie be at the top of my most underrated. I didn't even let myself put it in the top 5. I was like, you know what? Not allowed. For no real reason. There's no laws. There's no real logic there. I just said it to myself and then it was so. And I'm also saying to you now that you have to watch it, okay? I love Cursed. At number 5, we have the only short film on this list, Oculus Chapter 3, The Man with the Plan, with only 2.1 thousand logs on Letterboxd. This is technically the most underrated movie on this list. This is the short film that Mike Flanagan directed, which then led to the opportunity of him directing the feature film. I love the feature film. When I did my big director deep dive on him, and it's like an hour and 15-minute long video, I watched this short film for the first time, and I think that more people need to watch it, especially if you're a fan of the feature-length film, or if you haven't seen that one, oh my god. Watch that movie expeditiously. It is amazing just to see how much he did with so much nothing. It looks like they had $0, and yet the movie is so compelling and so well made. If you love Mike Flanagan, it is so worth checking out the very beginnings of his career, because he's been there since the beginning. Moving on to number 4, we have Baghead. This Mark Duplass movie has been logged 14,000 times. It came out in 2008, and this one actually, I think it has the highest Rotten Tomatoes score. It sits at a 79%. This one also stars Greta Gerwig, and it's probably my favorite role of hers. Spurred on by a colleague's success, four struggling filmmakers endeavor to jumpstart their careers. Together, they retreat to a cabin in the haunting backwoods of Big Bear, California, where they hatch an idea for a new film, a horror flick about a guy with a bag on his head who torments people. But when romantic interests crisscross and their story comes to life, they find finishing the script may be the least of their concerns. Mark Duplass's mind is a diamond, okay? I don't make the rules. This is also co-directed by his brother Jay, but they just have such a specific style and it radiates from this film. A lot of their movies are very low budget, and even if they're not super high concept, they feel high concept. You always just feel like there is so much more going on than actually meets the eye. And this movie is no different. My favorite thing about it that I remember is that everything felt so naturalistic. I felt like I was watching a genuine found footage film, and it's not even found footage. It's actually listed as a horror comedy, interestingly, because I don't remember laughing that much. I remember feeling really unsettled by this movie. If you're unfamiliar with the name Mark Duplass, maybe you recognize him from a movie called Creep. That is probably his most well-known project, and he is fantastic in that movie. So unsettling. Baghead is probably not unsettling to the same degree, not nearly, but it is such a unique project of his, and I think it's totally worth checking out. At number 3, we have the only holiday horror movie on this list, Santa's Sleigh. It's been logged 12,000 times, which also surprises me. This one came out in 2005, and surprisingly actually has a 40% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Normally I don't talk about the Rotten Tomatoes scores, but I'm only realizing now that it is actually very interesting to me. And it stars my favorite boy from The Bye-Bye Man, Douglas Smith. It also very briefly stars James Caan, and if you're not familiar with the world of wrestling, Santa is played by a wrestler named Bill Goldberg, and it's just so not the Santa story that you'd be expecting. After a millennium of spreading Christmas cheer, Santa Claus reverts to his demonic self and gives the gift of fear. Maybe you noticed that it also stars Emily D. Raven. She's from Once Upon a Time, which was one of my favorite shows when I was a teenager. I don't know how you'll feel, but this movie genuinely makes me belly laugh. I have seen it multiple times. It's a movie that I might honestly start watching around every December because it's worth it. It's so ridiculous. Not only is it so funny, but the kills are so good. It's not a lot of horror comedies out there that use slapstick gore. Gore can be funny, and this movie definitely understands that. Santa's lore is also ridiculous. Like, it plays out kind of like a fairy tale, and the movie knows it, and everyone in the movie knows it. Everyone's in on the joke, but like nobody's really winking at the camera. That's my favorite. That's the best form of comedy, is when people are playing things straight. It takes real humility to do that in a movie this ridiculous, you know? So maybe wait on it. Maybe check it out this Christmas season. At my number 2 spot, I have Anatomy. This is actually a German film from 2000. Hopefully this counts because it probably was made in the 1990s. It's been logged 11,000 times, and it also has a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, okay? Yes, I have taste sometimes. For an ambitious medical student like Paula, being chosen to take part in a prestigious anatomy course taught by a legendary professor is a dream come true. But Paula's delight quickly turns to sheer horror when she finds a young man she met only days before lying in front of her on the dissecting table. Little heads up, don't look this movie up on Google because the synopsis keeps going and it kind of spoils a fun little twist. You can find this movie for free on Tubi if you're in North America, so you have no excuse not to watch it. What I loved most about this movie is our leading lady. I thought she was so great. She's such a great character to follow because I feel like she kind of more or less makes all the right decisions, so she's never frustrating, which at that time in the early 2000s, we didn't get the best final girls. Like, I love Erin from the TCM remake. She's great. I love Carly from House of Wax. Like, we got a few badass ladies, don't get me wrong, but some of the women in horror movies back then, they were giving flop, okay? Not Paula Henning, played by Franka Potente. It's German. I'm sorry. She was great, but my other favorite thing about this movie is definitely the practical effects. This movie is called Anatomy, and they do not shy away from that. But you know what? I'm not going to tell you how. I won't get into the juicy details because I think that you should watch it. I think it kind of has to be seen to be believed. Dead bodies were put on display in ways that I truly had never seen before. Take House of Wax and then make it medical, and maybe you can fill in the gaps there. But with only 11,000 logs on Letterboxd, we gotta step that up, okay? That's not alright. Oh my gosh, my number 1 and my number 2 are both international films, actually. Number 2 is a German film, and my number 1 is Death Bell. This 2008 Korean film has been logged 7.1 thousand times, and that is so shocking to me. That is the third least viewed movie on this list. Well, in my top 10. I'm not counting The Breed because that was an honorable mention. But do you like Saw? If the answer is yes, I think you'll like Death Bell. Trapped by a maniac, teenage students must solve a series of puzzles or suffer horrible fates. This movie might have some terrible early 2000s conventions, particularly with some of the effects and the editing, but I think that is part of what gives it its charm. The other thing that I loved about this movie so much, and why I think it is the most underrated movie of the early 2000s, is the story, okay? I was never not engaged by this film. Because first of all, it's not exactly like Saw, it's a little bit more psychological. A lot of it is more mental puzzles, rather than having to torture oneself or figure out some sort of a riddle. And the story bangs. I was so taken by the twists and turns of this movie. By the time you get to the third act, it kind of feels like really melodramatic. You feel like you're watching a soap opera almost. But I was completely invested. Is this movie kind of so bad that it's good? Maybe. It's got a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not the worst ranked movie that I've talked about today. You know what? A lot of critics just don't understand the appeal of a horror movie that's so bad that it's good. And I freaking love this movie. I wish that I owned it on physical media. I have not seen the sequel yet, and I'm dying to. I don't know where you can currently watch the first one, but the sequel is on Tubi. So make haste, track it down. I have a feeling that there is so much more international horror from the early 2000s that I haven't seen yet that I desperately need to. I would love to know your top 10 most underrated horror movies from the early 2000s. Please put them in the comments. Or if you don't have 10, then even just a top 3, I don't care. Any movie that should be on my radar, let me know. I hope that you enjoyed my list. Let me know what you thought of it. I hope that you go out and watch some of these movies. If you want even more content from me, there are a lot of other top 10 videos on this channel, a lot of ranking stuff, a lot of reviews of current movies, a lot of deep dives, like I mentioned the one of Mike Flanagan. I also do deep dives on single films, on franchises, on original versus remakes, so stick around. But if that's still not enough content for you, then perhaps you're a lover of traveling or physical media. In that case, you should follow my second channel. And if you get through all of this and that's still not enough, then join the Patreon. I post a bonus video to Patreon every single week. We love the patrons. They keep this channel afloat. Huge thank you to all the names scrolling on the screen. Underrated horror fans right here, okay? Everything else that you need, all my social media is linked down below, but more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye!